Yes.
And Avni, excuse me, I'm, Ariel and Avni are two A's.
Yeah.
Okay, I'd
Yeah.
like to. Does anyone have any comments about the dinner before we get started?
Y'all did a great job, kept it moving quickly, really,
Yeah.
really good format. The way you presented the awards, kept it going fast. Wasn't all just the Jess show again, just getting the 40 awards during that last year. It was really good the way you did it. I enjoyed it a lot. And Nancy, you did a great job yourself.
Well, last year we had 33, we had 33 awards to get through. This year we didn't have quite that many, so.
That's right.
I
Okay,
have to say, I thought it was so lovely that doing the azaleas. That was such a nice
Oh,
gift,
yeah.
I
oh,
think,
yeah,
for the
yeah,
landowners.
Yeah,
Um,
that was.
and it was a beautiful venue. I think you guys did a great job organizing. Everybody had a lovely time. The food was really good. Thanks for all your work on it.
Yep.
and the woman who took the pictures did a great job. There's a couple pictures in there of you guys out on the tractor. That, honest to God, I mean, if they were they were fit for like a frame. It was so good. So
That reminds me, those pictures, I can't download anything from those
No.
folders right now. I don't have download access.
Okay. We'll but
And also, Ariel, I owe you an email about the azaleas.
oh, you're good. We'll see.
Who
you
was the
tomorrow.
who was the photographer, by the way? Who got her?
She's a county employee. She's from our communications team. So
Her name's Catalina Otero.
Yeah.
Catalina?
She's been the one supporting, wasn't it Kat who was taking pictures? She's been the one who's supporting our passive rec subcommittee.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, she took some great pictures, and yes, I've already went to Avni and said, Avni, I've got to download these into
Yes.
the archives. So
to get into the folder, we've been working with our IT county, IT department to make sure outside users can access these folders. So at least we got the first step going. Now we'll figure out how to let you download.
I figured that much, so we're good. Okay, let's get started because we have a guest today. Jill is with us, Jill Carter. So let me call the meeting to order, and let's have an approval of today's agenda. Does anyone have anything to comment on or add or delete? Okay. Did I hear someone, Bob?
No, I don't have anything to add.
Okay, all right. So if I can have a motion to accept the agenda for today, please.
I move, Joel.
Thank you. Second,
Second.
Bob. Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's been approved. Let's go ahead we have minutes from the two meetings we had. On May 15th was our regular meeting, and May 22nd was our special meeting to hear about the Warren Wilson project. And does anyone have any comments on either of those meetings? Okay, let's go for approving the minutes for the 22nd. I have a motion to approve those, please.
I'll approve the motion.
Thank you, Bob.
Second.
Thank you, Matt, or whoever that was. Okay. All right. I'm going to do this the way I do it on other board. Is there anybody that does not agree with this? Okay. Let's vote and just say, aye if you agree with it, please. Aye. Okay.
Aye.
That's been accepted. Okay. The meetings for the minutes for the 15th. Please make a motion for us to accept those.
A motion.
Thank you, Robert.
I'll second. Sarah.
Sarah, thank you very much. Hi, Sarah and friend. Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. And that passes. Okay, thank you very much. So we have our 3 votes out of the way for agendas and minutes. I just wanted to, is Angelica on the call?
I'm here.
Okay. Hey, I just wanted to thank you very much for taking such nice notes. They're easy, they're simple, and I'm
Avni does the minutes.
oh, Avni does the minutes.
Yes.
Okay,
You want to make
Well,
sure credit goes where credit's due.
okay, thank
Right.
you.
I was gonna
So-
say, I wish I could take credit for notes, not
Okay.
me.
Okay, well, the 3 A's. All right, so Avni, thank you. These are nice, simple minutes, and I like that. So thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have anybody on the line for public comment? Okay, thank you. Okay, Jill, you are up next. Jill is going to
Thank
talk to us about the open space update, and this is resulting from our meeting on the 22nd, when the members of this board who are on her committee had some really serious questions about funding, and so we invited Jill to join us today.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Errol, can you, or Ebony rather, can you make it so I can share my screen? I put together just a few slides. Okay, it looks like it's now. Great, amazing. Thank you. Yes, thank you guys for inviting me to come and give an update on the bond. I do have some slides with an update, but I want to make sure that the majority of my time I can answer your questions that you have. But I'll run through the update itself, which I'm going to talk about the money and how it's been allocated so far, including how much is remaining of the $30 million. I also want to give you guys an overview of the proposals that we've received for passive rec, and then the timeline for the rest of our process here. So this slide is probably where the majority of your questions lie. So I am going to make sure that I pause afterwards to let you ask those questions. But as you all know, the open space bond totals $30 million. And the vision for the bond was that $30 million would go towards greenways, conservation easements, and passive recreation lands projects. Now we have 6 projects that have already been approved by the Board of Commissioners. They total just under $13 million. They are the Woodfin Greenway. There's 3 conservation easement projects that I know you all have seen at least one of those, being the Lake Eden Preserve. But there's also the Parham Fortner Farm and the Okoboji Farm. Pronounced it correctly this time. And then we have 2 additional projects that the commissioners asked staff to bring forward. And those are the Ferry Road Open Space Project and the Deaverview Mountain Project. I have some additional details on those 2 projects that I will cover momentarily. Additionally, we have some commitments that the commissioners have not voted on yet, but that we know are coming before the commissioners soon, and that we anticipate will be approved, hopefully, and we're building that into kind of the financial projections of the bond. So the first is the Enka Heritage Trail. As you all may remember, the Woodfin Greenway and the Enka Heritage Trail were both kind of brought into this process, and we knew we wanted to use bond funds to complete those projects. And so the Enka Heritage Trail is about $2 million estimated. And then we have another just under $5 million in conservation easements that we know of that are coming down the pipeline that we intend to bring before the Board of Commissioners. So those anticipated, and a lot of those are going to come before you. So you guys will have the opportunity to review those and vote on them and have them come through your process. So those anticipated commitments total about 6.7 million, which means that our total funding commitments, both approved and anticipated from the bond, is $19.6 million. And that means we have 10.4 million out of 30 remaining. And what are we going to do with that 10.4? I think is the biggest question that everyone has been having. As you all know, we are currently in the process of reviewing and recommending those proposals for the passive recreation lands application window. So that's really the first avenue for that $10.4 million. We've received a total in funding requests after some adjustments of about $10.6 million. So we don't have enough to fully fund everything, but we have enough to fund a lot of it. So the subcommittee for that window is reviewing those projects right now, and I'll talk more about that momentarily, and they can recommend up to $10.4 million. Now, if they don't recommend full $10.4 million, or if the commissioners choose, based on commissioner approval, I guess, then there might be funding left over after this application window. And that funding, whatever is remaining, is really up to kind of the commissioners of how they want to, what they want to do with it. They could choose that we want to have another application window for either passive recreation or for greenways. There could be another project like D-Review or Fair Road Open Space that pops up, but they do know that Passive Recreation Subcommittee is sending them recommendations later this year, and they're expecting that. And so that's kind of the first priority to see where this funding goes. So I'm going to pause here because I think you all probably have some questions on this before I go through my other updates. And I will see what those questions are.
I have a few just clarifying points on the conservation easement anticipated commitments. So this kind of came out of hearing that there was a lot of requests from passive rec and making sure we were reserving some funds for easements. Initially, this was the number that we were anticipating requesting in this next fiscal year. So not necessarily like the total of all easement requests. And I would say a significant chunk of that money is from the Ag Advisory Board requests, because we put in a really large grant to the state, and so some of that was matching funds. Anyways, blah blah blah. Long story short, I want to make sure we are capturing the land trust requests in that number. Right now, I believe it's maybe Warren Wilson and one other project included in that number, because we knew that was coming in this next fiscal year. But if we're looking at it as anticipated commitments, I want to make sure that we are capturing fully the land trust anticipated requests over maybe not just this next fiscal year. So I don't know if does that make sense, or Jill?
Yeah, I think that, and I know that number that's there. I mean, that's based off of kind of a list of anticipated easements that you all shared with me. So I think there's flexibility within that, right? So if the amounts for the easements changes, if other easements needs to be added into that or removed from that, then we can
figure that
adjust accordingly. Though we still only have max of $10.4 million remaining. So that will largely depend on what that subcommittee recommends and the commissioners vote on the subcommittee.
And the D-Review and Ferry Road, what pot of money is that coming from? Is it just coming from the general bond? Like, I mean, or is it like
so
I know it touches all places, but
so the $30 million is all one pot of money. The county has never, explicitly laid out how much was going to go towards greenways, how much was going to go towards conservation, how much was going to go towards passive rec, because as we started to get into this work, we realized that those buckets were not clean cut. Most of the projects include a conservation easement and a greenway, or a conservation easement and a passive rec. At least one of these projects on this screen right now includes a conservation easement, a greenway, and passive recreation. So it really did not make sense to kind of separate those so explicitly. And honestly, probably the category that's been the most strictly one thing has been those projects that are strictly conservation easements. So with that, Berry Road Open Space and Beaverview Mountain and all of these projects really are coming out of that total $30 million. Now, the breakdown of these commitments you see on the screen comes out to be about 6 million towards greenways, about 6 million towards conservation easements, and then the remaining like 7 million, 7.5 million are what we would consider passive recreation lands. So they're fairly even right now. Now, of course, with the passive recreation lands proposals, if the committee recommends the full 10.4 and the board approves the full 10.4, then the amount towards passive rec would go up quite a bit. But again, most of those projects in passive recreation include either a conservation easement or a greenway component or both. So the total split will probably still be a lot more even than it's feeling right now. And honestly, I know it feels a little sticky in that way, but I honestly believe we've been able to fund more projects and achieve more conserved acreage, more miles of greenway, more miles of trails by kind of allowing this flexibility in how that 30 million was built out.
Jill, this is Nancy. My question is, when you show a number like the Woodfin Greenway of $1.27 million, is there a format of what each of these include? Is the 1.7 just for purchase, or does it also in that 1.7 have after the purchase? Yeah, and that includes the safety and maintenance and upkeep and stewardship of each of these processes.
Yes. So there is not a set template for what is included in the amount for each project. So for Woodfin Greenway, as well as the Inca Heritage Trail, those amounts that you see next to those projects are what was needed to get them across the finish line, or what we anticipate is needed to get them across the finish line. So there is other county funding there. I believe there's some state and other local funding wrapped up in both of those projects. And then we just had a bit of a gap for each of roughly 2 million for Inca Heritage Trail and roughly 1.27 million. Now, for both of those projects, the majority of those dollar amounts is going to go towards the actual construction of the greenway, because Woodfin Greenway is going to be a town of Woodfin managed project, so they will be responsible for managing and maintaining that project, and that will come out of their just general operating costs for their Parks and Recreation Department, I guess. And then the Inca Heritage Trail will be a county managed project, and that will be coming out of our general fund operations from our parks and our general services team for the maintenance and the management of that project in the long term. That $2 million for Inca is really just to get the construction completed. There might be some right-of-way dollars in there as well, and same for the Woodfin Greenway.
I'd just like to add, in the passive rec application forms, it does not allow for long-term operational costs in their request. So Nancy, that may further answer your question. The stuff that we're looking at in the remaining 10.4, it would not include long-term management. They've got to figure out a way to do that. And we have to be comfortable with it in order to be able to award those funds.
Thank you, Matt.
Because that's exactly what I'm concerned with is $30 million looks all nice and shiny, and gets everybody excited. But once these projects, and I'll take Deep Review Mountain for an example, once that is completed in terms of allowing the public on there, then the care and feeding of that property it's got to fall to somebody who has the funds to do it. And if that's going to fall to Asheville Parks and Recs, whatever. Jill, you hear what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
And I will say for general obligation bonds, which is what the open space bond is, those bonds are intended to be used for capital improvements. So we can't fund long-term operating costs or staffing costs or maintenance costs with these bond funds legally. We can only use these funds to pay, which, I know you all have heard like my position is ending. That's why, is because we've learned like even my salary can't be funded. So these long-term operating costs can't come out of the bond regardless. We can only fund capital projects, which is why in our evaluation of proposals, we weighed that long-term maintenance and management piece so heavily, is because, to your point, we need to know that whoever is in charge of these projects, once they're built, has the financial capacity, the staffing capacity, the expertise to keep them safe, keep them clean, keep them well-maintained in perpetuity. So it's a little easier when they're county-owned projects to know the county's ability to manage it, but we have really built that into the projects that are owned by other municipalities or even nonprofits, that we want to make sure that this is something they have experience doing, that they're able to maintain that project.
And I'll just add, yes, we've been specifically asking. We've now seen presentations of all the projects that are proposed, and we've been asking those very questions. How are you going to do this? How are you going to do that? And getting them to give us an idea of how they intend to maintain these projects. So we've still.
Bob, how are they answering those questions? I mean, do they know what you're talking about?
They do. The application itself does require some evidence of track record. I'd say it's very similar to some of the things we look at here on Land Conservation Advisory Board, even though we technically really only have 3 land trusts that really push or are presenting projects to us. It's not that there wouldn't be another one somewhere, but these are groups that at varying levels definitely do, and we're in the process of considering, as part of what we recommend, whether we think those levels are in line with what the proposed development might be.
Right.
Yeah. This is Joe.
Sorry, I just going to pull up the list of proposals that we received so you can see who the applicants are. And most of them, or not most, but a lot of them are municipalities or other organizations that have, considerable experience managing these types of projects. And that experience definitely is reflected in the scores that they received from our scoring committee.
Yeah, this is Joe. I've got a question. We have some members of the board that also volunteer on the committee dealing with this. What is their involvement or role as far as input in these projects and the allocation of funds? Do they have a role?
Yes, the subcommittee makes the decision on which projects they want to recommend for funding. So right now, the subcommittee is reviewing all of these projects I just showed you on this slide. They've seen the proposals, they've seen the scores that staff gave the projects, they've seen presentations from all of these projects, and they're getting ready to do site visits next month with some of these projects. So the subcommittee is responsible for reviewing these projects and then making their recommendation of which projects they believe should receive funding and the amount of funding those projects should receive. So they they have a very critical, very critical role, and their recommendations will go directly to the Board of Commissioners for a vote.
Okay. Okay. The people from this board that are on the open use committee, do you feel that where do you, I guess, where do you see we need to have improvement so that all of us feel more comfortable that the issues after the purchase or after the contract is signed is going to be maintained and will be funded? Is there a way that we can get that in writing, in blood? You know, Matt, Robert?
I'll go first, and I mean, I do feel like that. You know, Jill had shown the list, and you can see who the players are. I think there's one really that's technically a private situation that might be a little different, but you're looking at Warren Wilson College. They're requesting improvements on trails that they currently manage. You're looking at the town of Woodfin. We've asked questions of how they're going to handle that situation, and they're looking at additional staffing. Camp Greer in the Works Community Forest, you know, they've got a working camp in Old Fort, and they are going to be utilizing their site in the southeastern part of the county. And so, you know, I think they're known players that have a track record. So I think it falls very much in line with what we consider important in the Land Conservation Advisory Board realm. There is risk, you know, there's going to be risk with everything, but I guess a point to be made there was we've got projects that have been awarded by TDA that still have not been implemented years after they've been approved. And I'm not suggesting that we would feel comfortable with that situation or allow it to happen, but we do have to be able to have a certain amount of risk in there. And I think that with the players that have been presenting and gotten to this point in review, I think there's a comfort level because the county has seen it as well. And if it fell real low on their list, we would know about it. So I think there is a layer of vetting that has already happened that by the time it's gotten to us, we are dealing with folks that have a good track record, or we're going to be asking questions that will vet them out. And then maybe the committee will make a recommendation based on that comfort level.
Okay. I think Matt nailed it very well, very articulately. And where we are now is we actually are going to be looking hard at these and decide not so much maybe whether we will or won't fund them, but how much we will fund them for, if not the whole amount, and how much we might decide, well, they've said they can get this done if they get this much money. So we're starting to get into that level of questioning. But I do agree that I think we've been impressed enough by all these presentations that these people have the ability and the capacity to continue maintaining these places for the most part, with a couple, that's about it.
Can I add something, Nancy, to this conversation?
Sure, Robert. Yep.
So when I came into this process, I anticipated this would be a 2 or 3 year thing, and it feels like in general that we're moving really quickly now. In fact, I think a little too fast personally, and I think that what prompted this meeting today, this conversation, Nancy, I think was that you were surprised. I think some of us were surprised that the county had already committed 2/3 of the budget, like
right
overnight, and we were surprised at that. And who was involved in that decision? Was it just the commissioners? There was no board, no subcommittee for I think a lot of stuff. So that kind of surprised us and prompted this conversation, I think. But some of these things, we on this board, we spend a lot of time discussing, $45,000 to cover some of the transaction costs. Right now, we're looking at, in very quick period of time here, the next month or two, allocating $10 million. And I don't think we have an understanding fully of these groups and this funds, how they're actually going to be really spent, but like we would on this board, I think. So I'd like to slow things down a little bit. I sent an email to the subcommittee about this. I think we don't fully understand all of it, but there are some things like what seems to be like a sidewalk, this Ridgecrest project, or a land purchase that's about $50,000 an acre in a flood zone. I mean, just there's a lot of big, heavy questions that we need to find out. Now, the other side of it is we don't spend it and we save 3 or 4 million or whatever. The county just going to spend that on the next thing that the commissioners find without going through us. Anyway, I'm kind of surprised at how quickly things are going now, and I think that's my biggest concern serving on the subcommittee.
Well,
just to add to that, the thing is, we made assumptions in the beginning. We were all under the assumption that things were divided, A, B, and C, and that was never the case. So our assumption originally was a little wrong. So that's why we were shocked when we found out it wasn't quite that way. But in retrospect, hearing how it was set up, we really weren't. It wasn't expressed concisely to us in the beginning. Therefore, we had the wrong assumption. So part of that was our not maybe thinking enough to ask that question a little harder in the beginning. But part of it was that this was a whole evolving process in the county, and I think everybody was involved was just doing something new. So it's kind of hard to. There's no blame. It's just we were surprised.
Well, but wait a minute. Ariel wants to chip in. Go. Well, okay. Let me just throw this out. I think the reason that we're so sensitive to this, Jill, is because this board has been through times where there's been all sorts of money, and then there's no money, and then there's all sorts of money, and it used to be general fund money, and now we have tightened the screws since the Wanda Green issues. So this board has become very aware of these questions we're bringing up. My observation is I don't see the same oversight from other, including the county staff. We know how to do these things. We've been at it long enough. And my concern is if all of a sudden the budgets of all these places like the town of Black Mountain or Woodfin or some, all of a sudden, if they tank and they go, oh, we've got to, take this off the table. And, these things that we're getting into are for perpetuity. And people have got to understand that the safety and protection and stewardship of these places is in perpetuity too. And I don't know how we tighten it down, but I think I think what Robert is saying is that we need more information like on paper and signed and sealed before these things get whipped through. And this looks very much like the days of the old time when we had general funding. And like I say, it was kind of like the Wild West, and it's not the Wild West anymore. So, okay.
I would just add to Bob's comments. I mean, I had some of the same concerns. I also do have concerns that if we don't award, and I'm not suggesting, I think that the idea of pushing it is a valid and reasonable one. I would also say that if we don't, like Bob said, the county's going to do it for us, or the commissioners are going to do it for us. I think if we went, they're going to award that money. I mean, they've already awarded 19.4 million. They're going to award the rest of it. And while we thought it was going to be a much more methodical process, I don't know that we've got that luxury, but I do agree with Bob that there is valid point to letting it, we didn't realize we were going to get $30 million in the first year either, as far as like awarding. And, maybe there's a way in our recommendations from the Passive Lands Committee, which would obviously have to be discussed in that realm, to put a timeline or some type of a milestone that has to be met before they would have to return the funds back to Buncombe County. I don't know if there's a way to do that, but that's one thought that comes to mind.
And that's why we asked Jill to we would like to slow this down a little bit rather than making a decision in the next month. We'd like to stretch it out a little bit longer and look harder. Excuse me.
Okay, Ariel had a comment, but I'm just looking at our chat page. And Lang just sent, the guidelines are here and he's giving us a link. Lay out the schedule for approving projects. Is this set in stone? How is the timeline determined? And yeah.
I'm happy to answer that question. So the timeline was determined in part by me in conversations with staff and county management. Full disclosure, they wanted us to launch an application last fall, so we pushed it back. But I then went to the subcommittee and showed them my proposed timeline for this process. We did extend the subcommittee's review time within that as well. But of course, I think what looked like a good timeline 6 months ago, I think now that we're in it is starting to feel really tight. And I don't think there was a way to know that 6 months ago that it was going to feel so tight. And we also didn't know that the funding was going to get allocated in other directions at that time. So that also puts additional pressure on this. So the timeline, to my knowledge, is not set in stone. I think the applicants are expecting to know one way or the other in August. The subcommittee made great points yesterday that the other funders do extend their own decision timelines all the time, and applicants are used to that. So maybe we have some flexibility there, and I don't disagree. So right now I am having conversations internally to see if that is possible for us to extend the timeline and to extend the project selection and announcement.
I would just say it's on that lines, of course, like all proper due diligence needs to be done. And if there's no way to accomplish that within the set timeline, then of course that has to happen for an extension. But I will say, all of these applicants, all of their planning is based on a published timeline, and that can really harm projects, I think, sometimes to have a sort of an arbitrary slowing down. If some things are unavoidable, and if it's necessary, of course, but if it's just for a sense of comfort, I think that could be damaging. For D-Review, I can speak to a little bit. We have a massive loan out for that, and that creates additional costs to a project to extend timelines if we can't pay down that loan in the time frame that we're expecting. And I'm sure all of the other projects have their own constraints. So just a counterpoint to the concept of slowing down, that there is a published timeline that folks have made plans around, and I would just caution not changing that without very explicit need.
We are aware of that. And so that's a real important point, Jess. Thank you for making that.
And Stag, I think Stag's been waiting to talk for a bit. So Stag, do you want to go ahead?
Yes.
Oh, we can't hear you.
I thought I heard her say yes, Ariel.
No, Stag is trying to talk, and Stag, we can't hear you.
Him. Oh, okay.
Okay. And I'm looking at Stag's note in the chat, and he's saying that point based on, where did it go? All right. Mine of the county that will be relevant to 2 of the commissioners. Okay, and Lang is leaving us. Okay, Lang, talk to you later.
Stag, are you joined through your phone for the audio as well?
Can you hear Ariel, Stag?
Yeah.
Okay.
We still can't hear you.
Yeah, I'll cede the floor to Stagg when he gets back on. But
Okay, Robert, yeah.
one point that I feel to be made is that on this board we have the benefit of these land trusts that have spent sometimes years reviewing a project, and they invested a lot of their time and energy on it. So by the time it gets to us, we feel pretty confident, pretty comfortable that someone's really looked hard at each of these projects, right? And I don't feel the same way here. We had staff review and evaluate projects, but a lot of these, or some of our townships, which are very organized, know how to go after grants and stuff. Some of these projects are not that way.
Yeah.
Just the landowner selling his land, and he's not even got an appraisal on it. We're supposed to say, okay, yeah, it seems like it's worth 50 grand. So that's the speed kind of thing that we're talking about. Jess, I totally understand what you're saying. And maybe some of these projects we can approve sooner or later. Maybe we can approve them in August, but maybe some of these we should spend a little more time until September or October is not going to kill, I don't think, any of these projects if it dragged into October. So that's
as long as the money is not all of a sudden snapped up and used for something else.
Well, and I think that's
And I think that's what I can't guarantee, to be honest.
Right.
I
Okay.
can't guarantee that
Okay.
the money will not
it's
be
just
used for.
frustrating.
Yeah.
I don't have control over that side of things.
Well, okay, Jill, this is what I'm looking at our time too. This
Yeah.
is what I would like to propose. First of all, Jill, thank you for coming today and getting this opened up to us. And because, you've got people on this board that we've been at this for a long time and we want to support you. We want to support the county.
Yeah.
I think we should, unless we've got any last remarks like Stagg, we should stop at this point. And I think this board needs to have another meeting. And Stagg is saying, my point is that Bruce O'Connell and Van Duncan are campaigning by saying the county commissioners are not properly managing finances and doing due diligence. This process seems to reinforce their point. Terry et al. Should be concerned. And I can imagine, that we're just going to see a tax hike in county property taxes. And here we're out spending this money, and even us, we don't feel comfortable with the way this is happening. So I think we need to have a separate meeting and talk about what we want to do in terms of feeding back to Jill officially. And I'll call it Stagg just sent us something else. Okay.
Well, I'll also say
Yeah.
all of you as advisory board members,
Yeah.
reach out to your commissioners. Like that's like a role that you can reach out and express concerns as well.
Yeah, but it's not, Ariel, I agree with you, except that the commissioners sometimes really depend on staff to make decisions. And I think in this case, I would like to see staff listen to some other people. And especially when Jill said she proposed a longer timeline and it was turned down. And so I think we need to do our work from our committee and then feedback to our commissioners and to Jill and to anyone else who will listen, that we do have these concerns. And I don't like this thing about Bruce O'Connell and Van Duncan. That really upsets me. But anyway, so what do you all think about that? Because we've got we've got a few things on our agenda, don't we? Or is this it for today?
We have one more pressing item about new board member appointments, but everything else.
That's right. Okay. Okay, so is the board in agreement? Or if we have any last questions for Jill? Okay, Jill, do you have any closing comments?
Yes, I just want to say, again, thank you guys for inviting me and thank you for all of this feedback. Like, trust me, I have felt a lot of it too. So you are heard. I am trying to figure out a way to kind of slow this train down and make it so all of you feel better. That's all I can say.
Okay. And Angelica just wrote a really interesting note about, bond funds are not property taxes. Angelica, I absolutely agree with you, but the perception of the voter doesn't see that. So to them, it's just, we're spending money on things and then they're raising our taxes. And that's all they hear. So we need to, okay, so we need to do some
Would
home.
this meeting be a joint LCAB and passive rec meeting? I feel like,
I don't know. What do you all think?
I don't know if it needs to just be another LCAB meeting. I feel like, I know that we have, we have members that are on that board, but I feel like Jill, what are your thoughts?
Well, my feeling is some of the concerns I brought up today, okay, I think the staff, whoever they talk to higher up, let's say, okay, and I know they could be spending half my career working for government. That's not necessarily an easy task, okay, but whoever are the decision makers, okay, I think these concerns need to be brought up with them.
So when you say staff, do you mean like Jill and myself and Avni, or are you talking like management? Because I will say most of us were very surprised to see the Ferry Road and the Deep Review property approved without going through the approved channels. So I'm not sure how much sway we have, but yeah. So clarify what you mean by staff.
Well, the thing is, the commissioners, they have the final say in this. I mean, they're politicians, okay?
Yeah.
And, I mean, it could be brought up to them or whatever, saying these questions have come up. And possibly staff could recommend, some possible solutions, okay, to get this clarified, these concerns as to how to resolve them. And then at that point, I think, there should be another meeting to discuss this further, since we have members of LCAB that participate in this.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we don't want to, everything's perception. Okay.
That's right.
And, we don't want, the perception that members participating, volunteers in this group, that's window dressing. That there's something, their involvement, their input, and to try to see what the reactions and where they're, present any possible, ways to resolve the resolution of this issue.
Okay. Thanks, Joel. Jill, what do you feel? I mean, I think that the LCAB itself should have a special meeting offline. We are not we are an advisory board of the county. It does not, you're going to have to correct me about if it has to be public. It does. Okay.
Yeah,
Eric
I
and
think it would have
and
to be.
Bob, everybody else. Okay, good. But the point is, I think we need to get our ducks in a row, and maybe rather than meeting with the whole passive rec committee, maybe we can invite Jill to that meeting, just to keep us focused in the right direction.
Sure. I mean, I think that I would be happy to come back again. I do want to make one last point, which is that especially the passive recreation lands component of the bond, like we are operating this as a grant making process. So this is not, the more traditional process that the government uses to decide which projects the government is going to use general fund dollars to fund and manage itself. Like this is a grant making process. So we have to rely on contracts with our grantees to ensure that the dollars are being put to the use that they're intended to be put to. And unfortunately, when we're giving that money to external entities, like we do lose some control over that. And the only mechanism we have to protect ourselves is the contract. Now, I don't think that means we shouldn't take our time in figuring out who to fund. I totally hear that, and I am going to try and figure out a way to make that happen. But I do just want to reassure you all that, like, no matter what, no matter how the timeline shakes out and who gets funded, we're going to have contracts in place, and there's going to be legal mechanisms that if they do not meet the terms of those contracts,
Right,
they don't get the funding.
right, right.
And so there are ways to protect the funding. I think, you know, to your point about making sure the subcommittee and this committee as well is able to do its job and be effective in its job. The staff have been very supportive in providing those scores. They've offered to, you know, answer questions, and they continue to do so. So I really think we kind of rely a bit on you all like asking the right questions, which is what you're doing right now. We try and give you as much information as we can, but it's hard to know, you know, what you're not seeing that you need to see. So please just continue to ask these questions. Ask for specific information that you don't think we've elaborated on enough yet, and we will get you all of the information we can.
Yep, okay. All right, I'm looking at the time. If I could ask Avni and Ariel, could you put out one of those survey, the monkey meeting things to find a time when we could all get together? Matt, quit laughing.
Yes, we'll send out a doodle poll.
About monkey meetings, okay.
I would have said the same thing.
All right, okay, so if you could do that, and let's not make this our monthly meeting. I think we needed to discuss this pretty quick, and especially since it now looks like politics is making the entry into this. And again, like I say, I don't like to see that, but it's happening. And Jill, we'll put you on the monkey meeting list too, okay?
Perfect. Thank you so
Are we
much.
looking in a couple weeks? Is that the idea? Or
Please, not July for me, please.
Not July, okay,
Not July, early August.
Okay.
early?
okay,
So just as a reminder, we do not have a July scheduled
right.
meeting.
So
So
let's look at the first week or two of August, Robert,
That works, yeah.
all right?
is that
Cindy?
early enough to help the process?
Well, I'm just going to bring that up, and if Jill's still on here, I mean, we don't know whether or not there's going to be flexibility. You know, from that last slide that she showed, we said tentatively August, and based on what we heard yesterday, I think just to address your point, my understanding was that if it went back a month or so, it wasn't going to impact that deed review project significantly. But we certainly don't want to. We do understand the funding concerns. So anyway, that would put us in a little bit of a pinch point if we're looking to if we do not have any flexibility in terms of our recommendations from the Passive Lands Recreation Board or Committee.
So it would be better to have it in
Sooner.
shortly than, I mean, we're just a few days from July.
I mean, it would almost seem like maybe the Land Conservation Advisory Board makes a recommendation to the Passive Lands Rec.
That's what I'm thinking, yeah.
And then we can take that up as we are discussing these other projects and how the funding might get allocated.
Well, then maybe we should do July, and Robert, we're just gonna have to rely on Bob Gale and Matt. And I would encourage you, if you're not gonna be available, to get your thoughts to your other subcommittee team members so they know what's on your mind, obviously. And then, okay, so let's look at July. And maybe the second week of July. How does that sound to people except Robert?
We'll send some dates out.
Okay, fine, thank you. Okay, Jill, thank you so much for joining us. You know, this is something we need to do. And we'll see you next month, okay?
Great, thank you.
Okay, good. Okay, the other thing that we have on our agenda is we have a new board application. And Ariel, can you tell us about this?
Yes, so I know a couple of months ago, you already voted to send Nancy Edgerton to fill a position that's opening up in June. So this, so that's, you've already voted on that. Don't need to vote on that today. This is a new application. I don't know if anyone, let's see, if anybody knows David, I believe it's Tuck, right? Is that who you
Yeah, well, he's with
David
Econom.
Tuck, he's a
Econom,
local
yeah.
landscape architect.
Exactly. He,
I
and-
know him. I know him very well.
Yeah, we work with him a lot. I know he's worked with the county and probably Southern Appalachian and a lot of our different partners. He was at the conservation dinner, and we were Avni was talking with him, and he mentioned that he would love to serve on LCAB, and so we took him up on him, took him up on it, sent him an application because we still have 2 positions to fill. So if you appoint David or recommend David, we would then just need 1 additional position to fill. So, so yeah, we emailed this application out, and just wanted to share that with the board. You can discuss your thoughts on it, and then if you want to recommend him, we can send it to the commissioners for a vote.
Okay, all right. I know that many of you know him. Is there any comments against us voting to send him forward? And if not, I think we should make a motion right now, just in because of time. And
I'd make a motion to approve David Tuck.
Thank you very much, Matt.
I'll
Second.
second it.
Okay, fine. All in favor, please say aye or raise your
Aye.
hand, whatever.
Aye.
Yep, okay. All right, so that passes, and we will send David's application to the Board of Commissioners. My only concern is it gonna cause us a problem, the fact that he does have an existing close relationship with the county? I mean, it's like, he's not really a private citizen. Ariel, is that gonna be an issue?
I don't believe it's an issue. Interactions we have with him are with our ag, or through our ag advisory board projects.
Okay.
And so yeah, I mean, we work with Lang on projects.
Yeah, okay.
We have partners. So not a concern or a conflict of interest for us. And we will get David and Nancy on the next commissioners meeting for.
Okay.
All
right,
good.
And
Any-
look out
any-
for another board member.
Sorry.
Okay, go, Bob.
Yeah, any conflict, potential conflicts, every now and then a land trust will not vote on something,
Right. he can
I
recuse him,
I don't
right.
see a problem with that.
Mhm.
Great.
Okay, so that's go. We're gonna send his name in. How about, do we have any quick updates from Southern App, Conserve Carolina, or Riverlink?
Nothing
Okay.
news closed for us.
Okay, Ariel, anything from you all?
We took a project to the commissioners a couple weeks ago for the bond. You saw the Okoboji project up on that update from Jill. And then the Ag Advisory Board just approved 3 new farm projects that we also plan to bring to the bond this summer. So that's exciting. There are several in Sandy Mush, and then one that has a lot of ridgetop protection and in Candler. So those are kind of generally what we've been working on. And yeah.
Right. Any questions for Jess or Ariel? All right. Can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting, please?
I move.
Thanks, Joel. Bob, did you second?
Second. yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, well then let's go ahead and adjourn the meeting. And we have some work to do. And again, I want to thank Ariel and Avni and staff for putting on a great dinner. It was amazing.
It was.
And so I will see you all in a couple weeks. And if you have any comments or questions about this issue or anything else, that you can send me, and we can gather those offline and forward them to the appropriate people. Okay. And just
Robert.
remember, you all can talk with your own commissioners. And so that is something that, I mean, they like to hear from you all. So use that, okay?
Good.
Okay,
And Bob, if you before you take off for Europe, if you could manage to write down specifics just for Matt and me, and just to help us while you're gone in discussing things further, that would be helpful. I don't know if you have time, but
Yeah, thanks, Bob. I appreciate that. I'll take advantage of that. I will. Yeah.
we've got to get Robert out of the hayfield, so, okay, anything else?
I have one question, actually. I
Yes,
think
Matt.
mine and Bob's terms are going to come up here. Is it
Yeah,
end
I
of this
know.
month or is it the end of July? And if it's the end of this month, can we still attend that meeting, since that would be a discussion that both of
Yes.
Bob and I have been.
My understanding is that it's Joel, Sarah, and Matt. Those are the three
Okay.
at the end of June expiring. So, but Matt, since you are still on the subcommittee, you would be welcome to join. You may just not have that voting power.
Yeah.
At that meeting. And then just as a reminder, you just have to be off the board for 1 year. So next June.
Well, I already volunteer, but
Well, and
I want to stay
also,
within my lane.
and also there is a small clarification that says, if there's some dire need for somebody to continue, we can always vote you back on during your off
I would
year.
accommodate that too.
Right, okay, good. All right, hey, thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Thank
Nancy.
you
Good
all.
job.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.